Hello, fabulous third graders. I've got another story for you. Story time with Pongo and Tawny. Pongo's really interested today. All right, here we go. The story is called Johnny Appleseed, a tall tale retold and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. Retold means that Stephen Kellogg did not make up this story. This is a kind of a folk tale. Well, it is a folk tale. And it's a story that was told to children over and over again through the years. And then Stephen Kellogg decided to write it down and turn it into a book. And he also illustrated it. And there's Tawny wants to get closer, and Paco is, I don't know, sorry, buddy, I gotta, okay, here we go. Johnny Appleseed. Sorry, Pongo, I got the book. There's Johnny Appleseed over there with his animal friends. I'm sorry, buddy. I know. I'm sorry. Here, I'll move the pillow. How's that? Okay. You good? All right, here we go. John Chapman, who later became known as Johnny Appleseed, was born on September 26th, 1774, when the apples on the trees surrounding his home in Leominster, Massachusetts, were as red as the autumn leaves. John's first years were hard. His father left the family to fight in the Revolutionary War, and his mother and his baby brother both died before his second birthday. Oh, so sad. By the time John turned 6, his father had remarried and settled in Long Meadow, Massachusetts. Within a decade, their little house was overflowing with 10 more children. And a decade is 10 years. So within 10 years, he had that many, 10 more children. Nearby was an apple orchard. Like most early American families, the Chapmans picked their apples in the fall, stored them in the cellar for winter eating, and used them to make sauces, cider, vinegar, and apple butter. John loved to watch the spring blossoms slowly turn into the glowing fruit of autumn. There he is, picking a nice apple. Watching the apples grow inspired in John a love of all nature. He often escaped from his boisterous household to the tranquil woods. The animals sensed his gentleness and trusted him. As soon as John was old enough to leave home, he set out to explore the vast wilderness to the west. When he reached the Allegheny Mountains, he cleared a plot of land and planted a small orchard with the pouch of apple seeds he had carried with him. And there he is, chopping down a tree. That's what it means to clear the land, to make a big place where the trees are gone so that he can have a field. John walked hundreds of miles through the Pennsylvania forest, living like the Indians he befriended on the trail. As he traveled, he cleared the land for many more orchards. He was sure the pioneer families would be arriving before long, and he looked forward to supplying them with apple trees. And there are the Native Americans that live there. He's making friends with them. When a storm struck, he found shelter in a hollow log or built a lean-to. On clear nights, he stretched out under the stars. And there he is, sleeping right there. Campfire just right there under the stars. Over the next few years, John continued to visit and care for his new orchards. The winters slowed him down, but he survived happily on a diet of butternuts. And here he is underneath. It's got a little shelter there. One spring, he met a band of men who boasted that they could lick their weight in wildcats. That means that they thought they were real tough and they could beat up anybody. They were amazed to hear that John wouldn't hurt an animal and had no use for a gun. They challenged John to compete at wrestling, the favorite frontier sport. He suggested a more practical contest, a tree chopping match. The woodsman eagerly agreed. Yeah, this is the wrestling, but now looking at John Chapman and looking at the other men, it doesn't look like he would win a wrestling match, would it? Because he's a lot smaller than those guys. And here they go, a tree chopping match. Look at them all. Here are all the woodsmen chopping down as many trees as they can, going as fast as they can. Chop, 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 chop. Look at they're all falling all over each other. When the sawdust settled, there was no question about who had come out on top. John was pleased that the land for his largest orchard had been so quickly cleared. He thanked the exhausted woodsmen for their help and began planting. So basically, John kind of tricked them. He knew he wasn't going to chop down most of the trees because he's only one person. But in his mind, he's like, I need all these trees chopped. So basically, those guys helped him without even knowing. During the next few years, John continued to move westward. Whenever he ran out of apple seeds, he hiked to the eastern cider presses to replenish his supply. Before long, John's plantings were spread across the state of Ohio. Macy has family in Ohio. Meanwhile, the pioneer families were arriving in search of home sites and farmland. John had located his orchards on the routes he thought they'd be traveling. As he had hoped, the settlers were eager to buy his young trees. So he planted all those little seedlings, and now they've grown into small trees. And so as these people are moving toward the west with all of their things, they're like, hey, wouldn't that be great to have a little apple tree whenever we get to our home we can build? That's a good businessman. Really smart. John went out of his way to lend a helping hand to his new neighbors. Often, he would give his trees away. People affectionately called him Johnny Appleseed, and he began using that name. He's helping them build houses. He particularly enjoyed entertaining children with tales of his wilderness adventures and stories from the Bible. Hey, look, story time with a dog and 2 cats. Oh, 4 cats. 5 cats. In 1812, the British incited the Indians to join them in another war against the Americans. The settlers feared that Ohio would be invaded from Lake Erie. It grieved Johnny that his friends were fighting each other. But when he saw the smoke of burning cabins, he ran through the night, shouting a warning at every door. Oh, that's helpful. After the war, people urged Johnny to build a house and settle down. He replied that he lived like a king in his wilderness home, and he returned to the forest he loved. During his long absences, folks enjoyed sharing their recollections of Johnny. They retold his stories, and sometimes they even exaggerated them a bit. So he said that he gave somebody an apple that was that big. That's what she said. Oh, Johnny gave me an apple seed, or an apple that was that so big. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, I think. Some recalled Johnny sleeping in a treetop hammock and chatting with the birds. Others remembered that a rattlesnake had attacked his foot. Fortunately, Johnny's feet were as tough as elephant's hide, so the fangs didn't penetrate. Well, we don't know if that's true or not. It was said that Johnny had once tended a wounded wolf and then kept him for a pet. I don't know about that either. An old hunter swore swore he'd seen Johnny frolicking with a bear family. The storytellers outdid each other with tall tales about his feats of survival in the untamed wilderness. Yeah, I don't think that would really happen, because if a mama bear, sees you with her cubs, she's not very happy. And here are a bunch of different tales that people have told. It's a picture collage. So here's that he's fighting off a bobcat or a mountain lion, that an eagle was carrying him away, that lightning struck his tree and chopped it down for him, that maybe that's a troll stealing his apples. He jumped across the broken ice. A giant trout was going to eat him. A waterfall. Oh, here it goes down the waterfall. Yeah, those are some tall tales. As the years passed, Ohio became too crowded for Johnny. He moved to the wilds of Indiana, where he continued to clear lands for his orchards. When the settlers began arriving, Johnny recognized some of the children who had listened to his stories. Now they had children of their own. So remember when he was by the fireplace, and he was telling stories to the kids? Now those kids have grown up, and now they have their own families. It made Johnny's old heart glad when they welcomed him as a beloved friend and asked to hear his tales again. And there he is again, telling more stories. When Johnny passed 70, it became difficult for him to keep up with his work. Then, in March of 1845, while trudging through a snowstorm near Fort Wayne, Indiana, he became ill for the first time in his life. Johnny asked for shelter in a settler's cabin, and a few days later, he died there. Curiously, Johnny's stories continued to move westward without him. Folks maintained that they'd seen him in Illinois, or that he'd greeted them in Missouri, Arkansas, or Texas. Others were certain that he'd planted trees on the slopes of the Rocky Mountains or in California's distant valleys. Even today, people still claim they've seen Johnny Appleseed. Tall tales keep going, don't they? The end. And here's an author's note about the legend of John Chapman. So it's just more information. All right, I hope you enjoyed Johnny Appleseed. And Pongo put him right to sleep. It's like a bedtime story. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye.